on this episode of Make Darton. Building trees in Minecraft is a really interesting challenge. I think the main thing that makes it so difficult is just that trees exist on such a different scale than at least I typically build. Trees just have so much detail. I mean, think about the trees around where you live, how much density there is in the texture of the leaves, the shapes of the branches. You've got trees with, crazy branches that arch up super high, super steep, other branches that go far out, hang down. And these are shapes that are pretty difficult to recreate in Minecraft. I mean, just look at these default spruce trees. In order to get them down to this scale, they're really simplified, right? There's no branches. It's just a trunk with leaves shaped around it. There's not too much detail in these things. But even with this really simple shape, like a lot of things in this game, if you expand it into a larger scale, it can look pretty beautiful. So today is the start of a pretty big project. This whole area that I've cleared out, we're going to turn into a huge custom forest. I've already started a bit. I've built these couple trees. I actually hadn't really built many trees before this. This was the first one I made. And kind of the common line through all of these is I'm trying to give these real structure. So I have the roots, I have the trunk, and then instead of just having these random bushels to give a shape, I've created these branches, and the branches have little bushels of leaves on them. And now that it's been a little bit since I made this, I think I would maybe add some more leaves on there, right? But this really gave me a good taste of the direction I want to go with for this build. I gotta sleep. So then this gigantic beast is the same logic of that first tree, just applied on a much bigger scale. So I have this big main trunk and then branches that come off. These are a little bigger than this one, right? These are full block branches. We have this main branch coming out, and then we have a little sub branch that kicks off of it. I think another little sub branch, another little sub branch kind of angling downwards, this one angling upwards. So then I took that shape, put a whole bunch of leaves around it, kind of following the shape of the actual branch, and then did that for 3 days to get this tree finished. And I absolutely love how this thing turned out, specifically because of the imperfections. When I made this first level, the thing I really loved that the previous designs I was working on didn't have is stuff like this, little parts where the branches aren't fully covered by leaves, right? And then when I finished the build, you end up with, there's a little gap here where you can kind of see through into the trunk. There are branches that are broken or that don't have leaves on them. And the way that these imperfections came together to make this overall shape, I'm just so happy with it. Trees look fairly asymmetrical. Trees look fairly asymmetrical and kind of random, right? And so this shape is just from me making branches, putting a bunch of leaves on them kind of haphazardly. And so when I finally made it to the top and made this whole thing, I did as little touch-ups at the end as I possibly could. Maybe just a couple spots where maybe it's a little too bare right there. There's not quite enough leaves in that spot. And it just makes this tree feel so alive, I think. It feels like a chaotic plant that is, kind of a mess, right? So these trees are the blueprint for what we're going to be doing with this huge area. But the final plan for this is for it to be a trail, like a wilderness walk or something. So you can see I've kind of marked out the path a little bit. So it's kind of hard to see, but this is around where the start will be. This is the trailhead. Basically just goes around the mountain. There's this little off path that goes up onto the hill, and then just going back all the way around, and then looping back. And I have a lot of other ideas of things we're going to be doing with this wilderness trail, including this little pond that we're going to be working on, hopefully in a couple episodes. But for today, the plan is to get a decent start on the trees and a little bit of the forest floor. All right, so I've been working on this a little bit, and I think I've got it to a good spot. I ended up taking some time off camera, just really getting in the zone, focusing on playing the game, not making a video, and this is what I've got to. This really kind of weepy, saggy tree that I really like. I used a lot of vines on here. I think at some point I'll go through with string, or can you do the thing with shears now? I don't think. Did they add that like just for nether plants or something? It's so dumb. Like why wouldn't they put that for everything? Anyways, probably at some point I'll go through with string and set it so that they're at varied heights and not just coming all the way through. I found I really like using the mangrove leaves. Obviously they kind of look like they're droopy, and then did some oak leaves as well. I laid out all of the leaves that I've been using for these builds so far, and this has been really helpful just for coming up with combinations. So I went with mangrove and oak because, well, I don't want to just use like one leaf texture. So far for each of these trees, it's been 2 leaf blocks, kind of randomly variated. This one I used birch and acacia, which it's just so fun because these leaves are so much more usable because of the biome we're in. This is what acacia leaves look like here, but here's what they look like. They're so much more saturated normally. Really nice. Same with oak. Absolutely. These are really vibrant leaves, but in this biome, I feel like they went with the mangrove well because it kind of has a similar texture of like large clumps, there's big leaves in there, and so I feel like that kind of matched. And the branches are pretty interesting. The first couple levels I made all of these really archy branches. You almost can't really see it now with the leaves on, but these are all kind of going and after the first 2 levels of exclusively those shapes, I realized I needed to vary it up a little bit. So I have this branch which just sloops down, the end of it's exposed, but then there's a side branch coming off that has leaves going down, and that's more common up top where more of the branches are kind of going out and down instead of the. Oh, and I used stripped spruce for the trunk here. Maybe this is something that everyone else is aware of that I just figured out, but there's an interesting continuity between specifically these 3 logs, oak, spruce, dark oak, where spruce planks look like oak wood and dark oak planks look like spruce logs. At least the outside texture, right? If you strip it, it doesn't. But stripped spruce, looks like spruce planks. Stripped dark oak looks like dark oak planks. And so I added a little texture in the trunk of this tree where I'm just putting a little bit of these stripped spruce logs in there because they have such a similar color with just a slight difference in texture. And then, I don't know, something about this tree, I was originally making it with oak, and it just felt like a stripped spruce thing. I think for the shape of this kind of tree, I wanted the branches to feel less like barky, I guess. Like this is a very fortified tree, right? These are kind of thin, barkless branches, I guess. I don't know. It makes sense in my head. So I've done a little bit of work around these trees of like what I think the floor will be like. We'll be getting a lot more into this later, but I really want the ground to reflect the biome. So with these trees, you know, there would be less sunlight, there would be leaves on the ground, and so having more of this brownish color instead of a, you know, vibrant green grass, I think is kind of nice. And I like the kind of plant spam under here. This just feels like the kind of thing that would have like a thick, not grass, but like bushiness under it. So next I expanded the path out to how far I'm hoping to build in this episode. I'm using packed mud and like brown mushroom blocks. These are basically just areas that have had the grass worn off of them by foot traffic. And then I started working on the lighting for this area. I put lanterns around the path, alternating, and then started putting in the hidden lighting on the forest floor. These lights aren't perfectly hidden, like if you walk right next to them, you'll probably see it, but if you stay on the trail, you can get that extra level of immersion. And then I threw together a little conifer, which I think turned out really good. And then I started on like a medium height tree. I was wanting this one to have branches that started low and went up really steep, with the leaves mostly up at the top. I eventually found a branch shape that I liked, and then I threw on some really bushy leaves. And I thought this looked all right, but I wanted it to be a little bit shorter, so I started over. This time I was trying to make the branches more sprawling and like outspread instead of climbing upwards. So I made some weird shapes, and then I threw a whole bunch of leaves on it, trying to keep a shape of like bushiness on each main bundle of branches. I really liked the look of this, so I added more branches. I liked the shape of the tree, but I thought it needed more leaves further down, so I added some small branches and then filled in the middle with some more leaves. Then I wanted to shape the trunk, so I widened it out. Then I expanded, adding roots like going into the ground. Then I did a little bit of touch-ups on the leaves. And then threw some coarse dirt on the ground. I wanted to knock out another quick little tree, so I threw this one up in front of the villager house. I used mostly oak leaves with jungle mixed in. The jungle leaves have these little plants on them. I'm thinking it could look like a fruit tree, like pears maybe. And that's the tree finished. You can really feel the difference walking through this area. Even just with these couple of trees in here, it feels more like a forest. And I really like the shape I ended up finding with this tree. It's really unique and like stands out from the rest. There we go. I also built this little picnic table, which I forgot to record. I really like the look of it. but when you get up close to it, the scale is a little weird, right? But like if you sit up on it, it feels like normal. And if you see it from far away, it looks all right. So I'll probably move this like maybe up here so that you're seeing it from further away, which hopefully looks less weird than this. Now I want to talk about the lighting of this area a little bit. So these lanterns go around the path, and I have them closer than they need to be. So these could be further apart and still be spawn proof, but I kept them close because of the contrast it gives to the area outside of the trail. When I was lighting this area up, I used this. This is a little mod which lets me see if blocks are spawn proof. So if I cover this up, you can see that these are spawnable. Mobs will spawn here. I was able to use this to space these lights out as far away from each other as I could while still keeping the area safe. Now, this is something I wasn't really trying to do, but it ended up turning out really cool because this area off the path looks so much darker than out here. And it gives this really cool effect that even though all of this is spawn proofed, these areas off the path feel separate from the trail, which I really want to come across. I want this to feel like the woods. Now that I've got a decent amount of like very unique trees in this area, I'm really enjoying the feeling of density in here. So rather than continuing to expand down the path, for the rest of this episode, I want to focus on filling out this area we have now, so that if you come in here looking at the right angle, it feels full and immersive. This next tree I worked on, I tried to do something a bit different. Because this is a bit further away from the path, I thought I could get away with some less realistic block choices. So using acacia and tuff, I started making this really pointy, dead tree. I went kind of crazy with this. I thought this tree turned out alright. I definitely learned a lot from making it, but it just stood out a bit too much, so I tore it all down. Still using acacia and tuff, I'm making a much shorter and denser tree, having a lot of branches going a bit further out instead of being skinny. And it resulted in this really cool, chaotic tree that's really different from the rest of what I've made. And as much as I loved the shape of the branches, I wanted to try putting leaves on it. So I made this big bowl kind of hanging down, and I think it looks pretty good. Although there is a little bit of detailing that I want to do later on in the episode. With that big tree done, I wanted to turn my focus to filling out this space. So I buckled down for a few days and just built a ton of trees. So that was a whole bunch of building in a very short amount of time. So let's break all of this down. What I worked on first was over here. I built this tree, filling in this, really big gap between these two trees. And then I really just got in this flow. Like I built this and felt so much more immersed and like I was in a forest. And then I thought, ooh, I want to fill in this gap back here. So then I built that tree. And then I wanted to fill in this gap. So I built this tree and this boulder. It was really exciting because I'm finally getting to the point that I can kind of crank these things out. Obviously, these trees are fairly similar. There's variation with them. This one's mangrove, oak, strip spruce, and they all have a bit of different shape and height, as well as different branches. But like, whereas these trees were taking me a full day, I could get one of these out in like 40 minutes. I did the same thing over here, putting these up, this time with dark oak as well as mangrove. I really love the space between the leaves on all of these trees. Having these branches so separated almost makes these leaves feel like more pointy, which I think is something that these smaller trees like this one and this one are kind of missing. I also did some nice bit of work on the floor. I found this look of coarse dirt with like lots of grass, ferns, and these berry bushes on top of it, but I just love the feeling of this. I know I'm throwing a lot of stuff in here. I'm probably doing too much, but I really like how it combines, feeling like a floor of like pine needles and dirt with a whole bunch of shrubbery on top of it. Forests like this in my area aren't really grassy. They have sections where there's a nice amount of grass, but it's kind of like a dirt floor with bushes on top, right? Lots of plants over it, but not like a flat bed of grass like this. Obviously, this is gonna change later. I haven't gotten around to it. And I did this thicker brush over here, which I am just so happy with. I knew that something needed to go here, but it couldn't be a tree because one, I don't really want to take away from like the feeling of standing under this huge, massive tree, which I think would be a little lessened if there was another one just like right here next to it. And also just like logically, there wouldn't be sunlight here. It'd be blocked by this tree. And so it wouldn't be a great spot for a tree to grow. So while all of this over here is kind of like a medium brush, I wanted to make something really thick over here, something that you couldn't really walk through. I started with this section where I was trying to make like a bushy round shape, and I think it's good. It looks all right, but what really sells it is this part over here. And this is very shapeless. It's kind of randomly strewn about, lots of gaps in between. It doesn't fill all the way through. Then filling all of those little gaps with grass, ferns, these bushes, it just feels so dense and like a real brush to me. Another cool little detail in here. So I had these berry bushes, but I wanted just a little more touch of red in there. The first thing I tried were these rose bushes, which look all right and could definitely be used like further back, but it's just way too saturated, especially those greens just come through the leaves too much. And then I thought I had a real genius idea with doing beetroot like on farmlands, and the red is definitely closer, but like half of the plant is this green, which is so saturated compared to this, it wouldn't work. But then I had like the coolest idea. It's really subtle. You barely see it through there, but nether warts. Oh, this is one of the coolest things I think I've ever done. When you walk over it, it's a bit weird and stands out, but it just pokes through the bush in really nice ways all throughout. And look, I know it's ridiculous, but I like it. I don't know, it's just a cool little touch. You barely even notice it, really. I also built this little boulder, which I think looks okay. I want to make this side a little rounder. It's a bit too straight, but it does look better than I thought it would, honestly. And I think I accomplished the look of it being like half in the ground, but overall definitely a step in the right direction. Happy where this is going. I also totally blew off putting string under these vines, and so it's now all completely grown and it looks very ugly, I think, So I'm gonna do that right now, or else I probably never will. So I've been working with so many plant blocks for this build, and it's made me really wish that Mojang added the right-click functionality with shears to everything. If you don't know, some plants can be right-clicked with shears to stop them from growing. So with these, you can see it there, the subtitle, plant cropped. This vine now won't grow further. This crop feature has been added to most of the newer plants, like the nether vines and stuff, but not the older ones. Obviously, vines would be the best thing to add this to. If I could just right-click on these to stop them from growing, that would be so much nicer than needing to have these little blocks in there that somebody could very easily accidentally break. But there is so much more functionality that could be added with this feature too. These berry bushes have so many different states. Like, this would be great. If I could just have bushes like this around, that would be so awesome. If I could have bushes at this growth level or at this level with just a couple berries on it, it would be so cool if I could freeze plants at these stages so that they could be used in building. Like, imagine being able to make a wheat field where you have all these different stages of growth in there. This is already a feature that's in the game. So Mojang, please add the right-click thing to everything. It would be so nice. So I'm very happy with what we've got in this area. The last section that I want to fill up for this episode is this little area over here. Just throwing in a couple more trees, some shrubbery, doing some work on the ground, and maybe just a little something on this first part of the hill, as well as this little area around this villager house, which I have a fun idea for what we're going to turn this into. So that was days and days and maybe weeks of building. And I think it really comes through in a nice way. A big part of this project for me is, it is going to be a huge build once it's all done, going all the way around this mountain. But it isn't exactly like a mega build. Like this, it's basically just a whole bunch of little builds put next to each other. Like by building every one of these trees completely unique, even if a lot of them are very similar, none of these designs are copied or rotated or whatever. Especially with this being a forest, like none of these trees should be identical. Trees in real life aren't identical. They're all slightly different, even if they are very similar. So this is the first big tree I made. I think this might be my favorite tree I've made so far. It's fairly similar to this one, I think. The shape is better. I like the overall silhouette of this one. A weird thing with these trees is they can look very different depending on the angle you have on it. Like, I think this tree looks great from this angle. I love the shape. I love the little, kind of squiggle at the top. It doesn't look too perfect. But, to be honest, especially this view, which isn't great because this is, how you're going to be seeing it when you walk under it. I don't like it too much. The shape looks a little too oblong and weird. I don't know what about it. And the same thing with this. The two things I was trying to accomplish with this tree is having the shape very gradually get smaller instead of a more steep slope like some of these other ones. The second goal, I don't know if it comes through too well. It's kind of noticeable, but all of these branches are going downwards a little bit. As you can really see it on the bottom here, how all of these leaves are kind of angling down. The effect is lost a little bit up top. I don't think it quite has that look as much, but I do really like it. It gives it just a nice difference from all of these other trees. So then what I turned this house into, we got our restroom down here. So I changed this path 100 times. So in that montage, you probably see many different versions of it. But I think I like this kind of the dirt path from normal transitions into a gravel path. I think it looks nice. I think this maybe looks a little too solid and fortified. I want it to be a little scrappier. But I took this villager house and modified it real simple. I added trapdoors on here, the stripped dark oak on the sides, redid the flowers, and this will make a little more sense later. But then on the inside, I did a bathroom. There's not a lot of space in here, so I just kept it very simple. A sink, a toilet, help us keep our parks clean. You know how it is, only you can prevent forest dumps. And then I wanted something a little more in this area. I tried a picnic table, but it just felt like it took away from that one, was a little derivative. So I made this little campfire thing. I think it's nice. It looks like there was a fire here. There isn't anymore, with kind of stones surrounding it. And then this whole back area, I kind of just went wild and tried a whole bunch of ideas. This tree, pretty basic, not much to say about it. This one is a little weird. The branches go out pretty far and they all kind of swoop down, not in the same way as these, where these all kind of bend down. These have more of an arch, like that swampy tree we did over there. I thought it looked a little weird when I built it, honestly, but now with everything around it, I think it looks good. It's a nice little different tree. And then down here, just another bushy brush. I at first just kind of had them randomly thrown about, and then I later came back and added specific areas where it's a little denser. It gives it just a little more of an intentional feeling. It doesn't feel like random block spam. And then over here, I built an echo of this, which I made first and probably should have talked about first. So doing more of a flowery bush, I had to be really careful about what flowers I used. A good chunk of the vanilla flowers have a really vibrant, bright green stem that would just stick through and kind of not match the whole vibe of this forest. So I ended up going with cornflower, which has like a really nice desaturated green stem. And then these peonas, which have like a really dark green stem, which is really nice, really fits this biome. And then some lilac, which does have a bit of that brighter stem, but it isn't as visible. And it kind of blends in well because the color is so similar to the peonas. And then I did nearly the same thing over here. I think I might actually like this bush better. It's a bit taller and the flowers kind of stick out a bit more. I think it looks pretty nice. So then I noticed that this tree didn't look particularly good coming in from this direction. I tried reshaping it, but I didn't like how it was changing the main view. So I just built this tree to cover the view up, basically. It covers about half of the tree, so you don't see it all coming in. So we're able to keep that nice shape here without it having to be super great far away. Then I started working on this area over here. Got this little tree. I think it's the first one I did with spruce that's not stripped. Oh, and then I'm using a little bit of like dark oak in there since it's like the same color. So I knew for the floor I was going to do these like mossy boulders. So first I tweaked the shape and texture of this first boulder. Got it like a little rounder, and then I changed the texture, keeping more of mossiness up top, with it being more of like cobblestone and andesite down at the bottom. And then I built up this boulder and then another one over here, and kind of a little mini one in the back. So for the floor, I wanted to do like an old growth thing. So I used these azalea leaves with birch. The birch just has a nice similar like different hue to it, I guess. It's a bit of a different green that's closer to the azalea leaves. So I threw a whole bunch of those around, as well as some podzol, mushrooms, some dead bushes back here. And I really like the look of this, but I'm not sure if this is the right thing for this area. It looks really cool, super dense, and I'm really glad I made it. But I think it's a little bit too overgrown for how these, trees are supposed to look. But I definitely want to do more of this style in another part of the forest, doing like a really thick old growth floor, maybe on the other side of the hill. I also built a huge tree back here, which I don't think I'm going to show just because it's so similar to the rest of these, but I gave it this nice, really big trunk. I wanted this here just to cover up this little spot. I thought it looked a little too bare. And then I did just some last couple touch-ups. I threw in a couple different materials on the ground just to mix it up a little bit. Got some podzol, some mud, a little bit of moss. And then I added like roots coming off to this trunk. Some trees have big roots going off to the sides like this for like structural support. I think they look cool. They're definitely different from the other roots I've done so far. And then I finally did it. I added more leaves to the first tree I made, just making it a little bushier, putting like one more layer around each branch, and it just really helps. And it was interesting to see like how differently this tree is made from the rest of these. Like I've just changed so much about how I'm doing this since this first one. So I've got one more little detail I want to add in here today, and that's with this tree. So I first had this idea for over by the pond, which will be, I'm thinking like kind of a swampy area, which is to have like lightning bugs or something. So putting lights in this tree that kind of flicker by occasion. So I designed a circuit that does this pretty well. So I'm first just going to build this circuit out here so you guys can see pretty clearly how it works. So I wanted these lights to blink at relatively random intervals. The main thing going on here is a dropper randomizer. So first we have this dropper pointing up with just a hopper going into it. Then you need an observer facing this way with two more facing upwards. Then out of the hopper, you take a comparator, 2 redstone dust, and then at the bottom of this observer, a copper bulb. You could do this with redstone lamps too. You just cut this out, make this just a normal block. I have this as an observer so that it triggers this twice so that it doesn't stay on forever. So then to get the clock going, you need 9 different items in this dropper, one of which is unstackable. So I just have like a couple of the weird spare tools from the early game that I've saved. And then I'm just going to take wool. I'm using just different dyed wools. You can use any block though. It doesn't have to be colored like this, just as long as it's each a different item and not like something that'll stack. So then if you hook a button up to the dropper and then power it, you begin the clock. So this dropper is just being powered on a loop. And every time there's a 1 in 9 chance for it to dispense this shovel, which when it does generates a signal of 2, which then triggers this observer, which triggers this bulb before then powering it again to turn it off. So the plan is to put a couple of these hidden in the leaves of the tree. I've gotten it as compact as I can, and I think this will be pretty easy to hide. So I think our first bulb is gonna go maybe like here, kind of in this denser area. Okay, so I think I found a good spot. Put our bulb there and then build the circuit, kind of working in reverse. So I'm using copper bulbs because the more oxidized they are, the less light they put out, the less bright they are. And so you can put in a variety of these to have, different flickerings of different brightness. All right, it looks pretty good. I maybe should have like one more leaf block in front of it because you can really tell if there's a bulb in there, where with that one you can't as much. So I might add a couple leaves around there, and then the rest of them keep them further inside the tree. All right, so I've got all of the lights in. I've got it pretty well covered up. You can kind of see it if you really look for them, but they aren't too bad. It's pretty cool being up in here and seeing all of this work. The sounds of the bulbs turning on and off are pretty satisfying. Oh, it's sick. I think that's pretty nice. I'm very happy with this. Now that we're finishing up, let's go ahead and just take a bit of a victory lap. This is such a cool environment to be in. Like this project is pretty much pointless, right? Like I just want to build a cool place to walk through. There'll be a little bit more of like involved stuff later on, but this is just to be fun and just to be cool to go through. And man, I don't think I've ever been in a forest that has felt like this before. Over here, we're getting there. Got a little bit of work to do on the hill. And then obviously there's this huge bald spot right here, which has been left bare intentionally. Don't worry. This is where we're going to be working on something next episode. And real quick, try to not use these rockets too much. But let's go ahead and just get a nice view. Damn. This is pretty crazy to see. Just the overall like silhouette that we're getting. Very excited about it. Now before I end the video, I just want to give you guys a little bit of info about myself. This is my first Minecraft video, and yeah, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself and like who I am as a Minecraft player. So the first thing, hopefully my username isn't too confusing. So my real name is Drake Martin. That's why I've got Make Darton. Hopefully it doesn't look too much like Make It Darton or something. Make It Naked Art. That's a sick name, actually. I would think that's cool if that's what people read my name as. I've been playing Minecraft since, I don't know, I was like 12 or something. The first game version I played on was 1.2.5. I remember like the snapshots were coming out adding like desert temples and jungle temples, and I was like so excited. I really enjoy survival. I'm playing here on a like small server, so there's a bunch of other players on, and there's like a whole economy and stuff. For me, the appeal with Minecraft is just as like a creative tool. I think a big reason I like this game is because it doesn't really feel like a game as much. It almost is more of like a tool. That's how I think of it. Minecraft is like an interface that you can design things with. I really like the creative aspect of that, especially like building as well as redstone and stuff. I like using redstone in ways that make the world feel like more alive. Those fireflies I think are so cool. I want to put those in like bushes and stuff next, especially in like a swamp area would be really cool. And then I've been working on a whole bunch of other things with that, like, you know, nature sounds. I've been learning how to do bird calls with noteblocks, which I think is a really cool ambience or something to add. So for me, like, this is a very creative game, and that's what I want these videos to be. Like, I want to show the process of how I not just like built these things, but like what I was thinking about as I was making them. What were the design choices I made? What did I learn while I was doing it? That to me is what's really interesting about Minecraft. And I think a lot of YouTubers now are really kind of yada yadaing their building. You know, they just kind of say, I'm going to build this thing. And then they show a couple of replay mod shots and then it's built and they don't really talk about it. they just move on. Like, that isn't what I want out of this game. So that's something that I hope like comes across in this video, focusing on the creativity of the game and sharing that with other people. This video is probably going to be unique because I was really learning how to make Minecraft videos as I was doing this. You know, with those different montages, I was really trying a bunch of different ideas for how to show building. If there were any that you guys found like particularly engaging, let me know, because like I really want to figure that out and like figure out how to show this stuff in a cool way. But yeah, if you're watching this and it feels like I packed too much into this video, maybe I didn't go into detail enough, this video from when I built the first tree I think has been 2.5 months, which obviously is not sustainable. I would like these to be much quicker of projects. But yeah, like if you like this style and if you like kind of creatively focused Minecrafting, then I really hope you stick with me for some time. I'm hoping to be uploading pretty consistently for a good chunk of time. Let me know what you thought about it. You know, I actually really care. Like, let me know if you thought certain parts were boring, if certain parts were really good. Is there something I should do at the end of the video? It feels weird to end with me just out here. I guess I gotta do the F5 thing like all YouTubers do. Goodbye. Please like and comment. Thank you. I destroyed grass. Bye.